Hello, fight fans. I'm that boxing writer, Jeremy Harridges, and welcome to another edition of Boxing and Coffee. For those of you that are new subscribers, welcome to the That Boxing Writer family. Make sure that you check out all my videos. Make sure that you guys like, subscribe, set a reminder, top right-hand corner of the YouTube page. Make sure you hit that little bell to make sure that you can set your reminder so you can get new content when it comes out. But really happy to see some new people subscribing, seeing those numbers grow, seeing more people talk and get into the action about boxing. If you don't know what I do in the mornings, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I typically have an episode of Boxing and Coffee where I talk about boxing and drink some coffee. So that's what we're doing today. I didn't have any episodes on Monday or Wednesday of this week. I think I was thrown off schedule by the Sunday Mayweather versus Paul fight. So I've been trying to play catch up with everything. So typically I like to have these videos out by 10:30 a.m. Central Time. That'd be 11:30, 11 Eastern Time. A little bit later than that today, but still enjoying some coffee and talking some boxing. So right now, the reminders with the coffee. I've been drinking Real Good Coffee Company's French Roast based up in Seattle. And I've been drinking it for a while, and I'm ready to give my verdict. I typically give ratings out of the smell, the taste, and the effect. For this one, I typically give the smell and taste a 4. I wasn't too impressed with it. It's got a very earthy taste, not my cup of coffee or my preferred taste in coffee. As far as the effect, it's your typical cup of coffee, so I'll go out and give it a 7. But overall, I mean, the reason I drink it, yes, I drink it for the feeling, but I can get that same feeling from any cup of coffee with some caffeine in it. I have to give this my first negative rating of 4. So sorry, Real Good Coffee Company. I just wasn't feeling it. I'm sure maybe some of their other coffees are great, but this one just wasn't feeling right. So I cannot give it my stamp of approval. In order to have a positive review, I have to at least give an overall rating of a 5. I know that sounds low, but again, I've got high standards, and unfortunately, this coffee just didn't nail it. Now, I made the decision to buy a 2-pound bag of beans, which means I'm going to be drinking this cup of coffee for a while. So even though it's not my favorite cup of coffee, I've got a lot of it, and I'm not one to waste coffee. So it's going to be a while before I bring in a new coffee for review. So I'm going to be drinking a coffee that I don't terribly enjoy for a while. So if you don't hear me talking about coffee, that's why. I've got 2 pounds worth of this coffee that I don't like. Hey, it's good enough to drink. Let's put it that way. So cheers. Just wished I liked it more. This video is primarily going to be a preview for the Shakur Stevenson versus Jeremiah Nakathila fight that's happening on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and ESPN Deportes tomorrow, Saturday, June 12th. I'm going to be talking about that. Few things here. If you notice that I'm using my left hand here, and maybe I'm carrying myself a little bit awkwardly. I was in the gym yesterday, and I was doing some pull-ups, right? A plyometric, simple plyometric, nothing out of the ordinary for me. And as I was pulling up, I'm going to use my good arm because my other one doesn't work too well. As I'm pulling up, I just felt a massive pop and felt something burst in my chest, and automatically I just went flying down. So right now I am injured. So if you see me carrying this side a little bit awkwardly and not using that arm much, yeah, something tore or was partially torn or was ripped or popped. I don't know. I get an MRI next Friday, so we'll see what happens with that. So I'm trying not to look awkward here, but it is painful. So unfortunately, it's looking like it's either a torn pectoral muscle or a partially torn pec or some sort of ligament or tendon in there that I tore. Something got damaged. It doesn't look right. It doesn't feel right. So we'll see what happens there. So wish me luck with that one. Cheers again. Just want to explain that if I look like a hunchback for any reason, I mean, it's really affecting the way I carry myself. So sorry about that, guys, for the awkwardness if you notice that at all. And I'm looking at myself on camera. It's like I'm trying to get comfortable. It's not working. So before we get into the Stevenson Nakathila fight, I never talked about the Mayweather versus Logan Paul fight and my reaction to it. Yeah, I mean, generally it was a negative reaction all across the board. And I just wanted to temper that a little bit. Yeah, was it a good fight? No, it wasn't. It wasn't a good fight at all. You can just look at the numbers. It's not what people expected. I mean, through 8 rounds, and I'm looking at the CompuBox numbers right now, Mayweather landed 43 of 107 punches. Paul actually threw a lot more, landed less, 28 of 217 total punches. So you never got that action fight that people were hoping for. Hey, credit to Logan Paul for making it through 8 rounds. I know Mayweather said he was fighting to survive. Who wouldn't be fighting to survive? If you're an average Joe, hey, Logan Paul is not an average Joe. I mean, he's in fantastic shape. He's all sorts of cut up and a very good athlete. So I don't want to count him short. But again, not an experienced boxer. So despite the fact that he was, almost 35 pounds heavier, I don't think that matters a whole lot because you have someone that's, again, still trying to fight to survive, and that's okay. Nobody wants to get knocked out on national television. And hey, kudos to him for making it all the way through. Again, didn't make it a pleasing fight, but there's no guaranteeing that just because you buy a fight that it's going to be a good fight. It's just one of those things. You hope for the best, and in this case, we didn't get it. And again, you have Floyd Mayweather, who's 44 years old. Maybe we saw kind of the reality of where he's at right now, and that's okay. At least we know. You're not always going to be pleased. I remember back, hey, Mayweather versus Pacquiao wasn't a great fight either. Technically we can look at it and appreciate it and was definitely much better than this one. But it wasn't that action fight that people expected, and a lot of people looked at that as a letdown. So again, there's no guarantees. What I will say that I was disappointed with was the suspect feed. Now, maybe there was so many people trying to buy it at one time, and that was what was causing the Showtime app to crash. And I love Showtime. Great people, but it just wasn't working that well. I lost my feed at least 7 or 8 times. There were times where I had, 8, 9, 10 minutes before I was able to get it back, frantically hitting reset. I was doing live play-by-play of the fight for fansided.com. Luckily, the actual fight, the main event, I didn't lose, but many of the fights leading up to that, I lost big chunks of them, and I had to go back and rewatch them to make sure I was giving even though I wasn't doing a live play-by-play for Fansided on those, but I had to go back and rewatch them, and it was problematic. I mean, like I said, my feed dropped a good 7 or maybe even more times than that, to be honest. So I know a lot of people were disappointed. Some people didn't get on at all, but I think Showtime's doing the right thing. I've seen people talking about how they've gotten their refunds. And unfortunately, in this tech era where most of us are streaming, it's one of those things. So I was disappointed more with that than anything. Let me hear it. Did you guys buy the fight? Did you have any sort of issues that went on with it? If so, comment down below. Let me hear your story. I'm interested to hear what your experience and what your feelings were about that one. I'm feeling that you're all feeling some sort of way about it. Anyway, enough about that. I mean, it was a little less than a week ago. Let's move on to other things. Last night, I don't do MMA. I just don't do it. It's not my thing. I'm not going to fake it like pretending like I'm in love with it or I really have a passion for it. There are some fights that intrigue me and that I'll watch, but it's not my thing. Boxing is what makes me excited. Boxing is what I like to cover. But you had a boxer in Claressa Shields, 2-time undisputed champion, 3-division champion, moving to MMA in her first MMA fight against Brittany Elkin on PFL4. So that one I did watch. And looking back at that fight, she was in trouble early on. And that's what I always say is that, hey, when anyone tries to sit here and argue back and forth about boxing and MMA, I always say, listen, they're 2 different crafts. They're 2 different forms, 2 different arts. respect that. Anytime that you have a boxer going into MMA, the experienced MMA fighter is always going to have the edge. They know their craft. They know the ground game. They know how to strike. You have to have a multitude of experiences and expertises when it comes to that art form. In boxing, there's a whole different set of skills. And a lot of people just say, well, you're just using your fists. But there's so much more to being a skilled puncher than just your fists. There's footwork that's involved. There's breathing. There's the endurance, in my estimation, is more rigorous for boxing. I use Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor to build that example. McGregor didn't realize how arduous the energy depletion is going to be in boxing, going for 12 rounds. He made it to 9.5. It's a different ball game. It's going to tax you in different ways. Yeah, you might be used to wrestling and holding people down and grappling, but having the endurance to throw punches continuously for that long, it's a different experience. And I, again, two different disciplines, two different expertises. And we saw it with Shields last night. She was in real trouble. She lost the first 2 rounds. Elkin had a full mount on her, was sitting on her chest, pile driving punches. And kudos to Claressa Shields for surviving that and then coming back, storming back, and stopping the fight on punches, getting a TKO victory. So, hey, I understand Brittany Elkin isn't the most experienced MMA fighter. She gave Claressa Shields a great run for her money, and Claressa Shields won. What's the future for her in MMA? I don't know. The future for her is still in boxing. I think that's her skill set. That's what she knows. That's what she's an expert in. She didn't throw too many kicks. I didn't count, but it was a rarity. I don't think she's ever going to be skilled with her legs as far as striking goes. Yeah, she's great. She can be great at ground and pound, but I don't see her having a ton of really growing that experience as a wrestler or as a submission fighter. I think she's one-dimensional in her attack. Can that change over time? Sure. Do I think she's going to really invest in making MMA her primary? No. She got a taste of MMA. I think she got a lot of attention from it, and I thought, hey, she performed relatively well for her first fight, but I just don't see the ceiling there in MMA for her that I do in boxing. I think there's just too much time and too much to learn that she needs. Yes, she's young, but again, she doesn't have those backgrounds. A lot of MMA fighters have a background in wrestling before they step into that. And you do have people that have striking backgrounds that end up coming into it and do well and learn the things that they need to learn, particularly kickboxers. But boxing, you have different fighters that have made a relative degree of success at it, but I don't see her ever being anywhere as near as good of an MMA fighter as she is a boxer. So we'll see if she jumps into the PFL again and gives it another go. Hey, it was entertaining. It was fun to watch, and I will definitely be watching again if she enters another MMA fight. Looking ahead to the weekend bouts, the ones that I'm really going to be paying attention to: Shakur Stevenson versus Jeremiah Nakathila. It's an interesting matchup. I think a one-sided one. Shakur Stevenson, former WBO featherweight champion, taking on a relatively unknown Nakathila. And it's an interesting matchup. The main event, let's start off with that one. Stevenson has so much potential. I think he's so good. I think he runs away with this one. Now, I say that because to me, Nakathila is an unknown quantity. I really have not. I'm going to be spending tonight really looking at more film on him because there's not a ton out there. He's from Namibia in Africa, and he really hasn't fought much outside of Namibia. If you look at his record, I believe he's only fought outside of Namibia twice, once in Russia and once in South Africa. Other than that, it's always been in his home country. So we haven't really seen him again. And the other thing is, we haven't seen him against top tier opposition. He's got some fighters with good records on there, but nowhere near the type of experience that you see with Shakur Stevenson. So I would expect Shakur Stevenson to run away with this one. Looking how they stack up, Nakathila has a nice KO rating, but he does have a loss on his record. It was a decision loss, and he was away from home. So you could argue that, and it was a majority decision. So you could argue that maybe he deserved the benefit of the doubt on that one. But yeah, I just don't see him having much of a chance in this one. But I haven't watched enough film on him to say right now that if he makes it through or if he gets KO'd. So it's a very intriguing matchup because you are dealing with an unknown quantity. And whenever you're dealing with an unknown fighter who's got a high KO rating, you don't know what to expect. So we'll see what happens there. I'm most fascinated with some of these undercard bouts. As you guys saw, I had interviews with two of the fighters on the undercard, super lightweight Julian Rodriguez and welterweight Xander Zayas. Xander is fighting Larry Friars. It's a 6-round fight. I expect Xander to knock out Friars somewhere within the first 3 rounds. Now, that's expecting a lot. That's a high expectation, and it's always tough to predict when that's going to occur. But I just think Xander's really feeling his power. I think he's taken another step up in his development. So I think he runs away with this one. He looked great in his last fight. Sensational 52nd round knockout. If you haven't seen it, check out my video, and then go check out Xander and his previous exploits in the ring. And I think you'll be quite impressed. But Jose Pedraza, former 2-division champion, taking on Julian Rodriguez. Rodriguez had some setbacks in his career with injuries. We talked about that in the video that I did with him, but could be one of those gems that's just waiting for an opportunity. And maybe Jose Pedraza is his breakout opportunity. We know that he has power. He's riding a 2-fight KO streak. So he's putting the last 2 fights, he's knocked opponents down 7 times. That's impressive. So can he do that against Pedraza? I mean, we're talking about a guy that's been in there against some of the best. Lomachenko couldn't get him out of there. If Julian Rodriguez can put him out, then he is going to vault up into that top 10 region, and people are going to be excited about him. So really, this is his audition for the big time. He's a really nice guy. Both him and Xander are nice guys. And most of the time what you're seeing is a lot of these people are just nice people that are just working their way up there. And Julian Rodriguez had a ton of amateur experience. As he told me, he was an alternate for the Olympics, felt that he wasn't treated fairly by USA Boxing. He felt like he should have been in there. So who knows what his ceiling is? I don't think we've seen his best yet. I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say Julian Rodriguez beats Pedraza by decision. Trying to get a guy like Pedraza out of there is not going to be easy. I think it's going to be a tough fight, but I like what I'm seeing from Rodriguez, so I give him the benefit of the doubt. Pedraza versus Rodriguez is going to be the primary undercard, so it's going to directly precede the Stevenson versus Nakathila fight. And those are going to be going off at, I'm trying to give you an accurate time here. Those are going to be going off at 10 o'clock Eastern on ESPN or ESPN Deportes or ESPN Plus. You can get it on any of those platforms. The other undercards, or most of the undercards, including Xander Zayas' fight, are going to be on ESPN Plus. And the coverage on those starts at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. All times are Eastern on ESPN Plus. So you can watch the undercards 6:30 ESPN Plus, main event 10 p.m. ESPN Plus or ESPN Deportes, and that's what we got going on. So make sure to like, subscribe, set the reminder so you guys are notified when the videos are coming out. I've got a few other videos with other fighters that I talked to in the previous days. So make sure to stay tuned for new content because it is coming at you. Have a good one, guys, and cheers.